Have you ever been humiliated publicly just to make you compliant? On the night I turned 18, my mother toasted me, then called me dead weight before the whole party. She declared my sister was Harvard Law while I was nothing, sliding legal papers across the table like a sentence. I signed without a tear, because that signature was a trap. By the time the truth surfaced, my family realized they hadn't buried me that night. They had buried their own lies. My name is Celia Montrose, and for 18 years, I had been trying to figure out if I was a daughter or just a piece of furniture that my mother could not quite find the right spot for. In the pristine, manicured world of Hawthorne Ridge, Ohio, everything had a place. The hedges were trimmed to exact geometric angles. The driveways were paved with stone imported from Italy. The children were trophies, polished and displayed on mantels for the neighbors to envy. Tonight was supposed to be my turn on the mantel. It was my 18th birthday. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, smoothing down the fabric of a dress I had bought myself with money saved from working part-time shifts at the local library. It was a simple navy blue slip dress, elegant but understated. I had spent an hour curling my hair, trying to look like the woman I hoped to become, someone capable, someone visible. Downstairs, the house was already vibrating with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of crystal. My mother, Veronica Montrose, had insisted on throwing this party. For weeks, she had been on the phone with caterers and florists, orchestrating an event that felt less like a birthday celebration and more like a coronation. "Make sure you are ready by 7, she had told me that morning, not looking up from her tablet. "The councilman is coming, and the partners from the firm. Do not embarrass us, Celia." I had held on to a foolish, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this lavishness was actually for me. Perhaps under the layers of ice that encased my mother's heart. She wanted to celebrate the fact that her youngest daughter was legally an adult. I was wrong. When I finally stepped out of my room and walked to the top of the grand staircase, the view below stopped me cold. The living room was packed, but I did not see a single friend of mine. There were no balloons, no streamers, no music that a teenager would listen to. Instead, a string quartet was playing something somber in the corner. The room was filled with men in charcoal suits and women in cocktail dresses that cost more than my entire life savings. These were my mother's colleagues, her rivals, her stepping stones to social dominance in Hawthorne Ridge. I walked down the stairs, my hand gripping the banister tight enough to turn my knuckles white. No one looked up. No one cheered. I was a ghost descending into a machine. Celia. The voice did not belong to my mother. It belonged to Sloane. My sister materialized at the bottom of the stairs. She was 21, 3 years older than me, and she looked like she had already conquered the world. She was not wearing a dress. She was wearing a sharp, tailored black tuxedo suit with stilettos. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, flawless bun. She looked like a shark in human skin. "Finally," Sloane said, checking her watch. "Mom is looking for you. The caterers are running low on ice for the Scotch station, and the staff is busy passing hors d'oeuvres. Go grab 2 bags from the chest freezer in the garage and refill the buckets." I blinked, my hand still on the railing. "Sloane, it is my birthday. I am wearing heels." Sloane let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. "And the councilman is waiting for a drink. Do you want to be useful, or do you want to stand there looking tragic? Go, now." She turned her back on me before I could answer, immediately engaging a tall man in a conversation about tort reform. I stood there for a second, the humiliation prickling at the back of my neck like a heat rash. I went to the garage. For the next hour, my 18th birthday consisted of hauling bags of ice, clearing empty cocktail napkins from side tables, and directing guests to the bathroom. I was not the guest of honor. I was an unpaid staff member. I was the decoration that cleaned up after itself. "Oh, excuse me, dear," a woman in a red velvet dress said, handing me her empty champagne flute without looking at my face. "Could you take this?" "I am actually," I started to say, wanting to tell her I was the birthday girl. "Thanks," she cut me off. Turning back to her husband, I took the glass. I walked to the kitchen, placed it in the sink, and stared at my reflection in the dark window above the faucet. My eyes looked hollow. The hope I had nursed all day was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. "Celia!" My mother's voice was sharp, cutting through the noise of the kitchen. Veronica Montrose stood in the doorway. She was immaculate in a silver gown that shimmered like fish scales. Her makeup was armor, her smile was a weapon. "What are you hiding in here?" she asked, her tone accusatory. "It is time for the toast. Come out, and fix your hair. You look disheveled." She did not wait for me. She spun around and clicked her heels back toward the living room. I smoothed my hair, took a deep breath, and followed her. The room had quieted down. My mother had taken her position in front of the marble fireplace, holding a glass of vintage sparkling wine. Sloane stood next to her, looking radiant and predatory. They looked like a pair of queens holding court. I walked over, unsure where to stand. I moved toward them, but my mother made a subtle motion with her hand, a small shooing gesture indicating I should stand a few feet to the left, near the edge of the hearth, not with them, adjacent to them. "Attention, everyone," Veronica said. Her voice projected perfectly, a skill honed by years of courtroom battles and boardroom takeovers. "Thank you all for coming tonight. We have so much to celebrate." The crowd murmured their agreement. "As many of you know," Veronica continued, placing a hand on Sloane's shoulder, beaming with a warmth I had never felt directed at me. "Raising children in this world is a challenge, but when you see them succeed, it makes every sacrifice worth it. Sloane here has just received her news." She paused for dramatic effect. The room held its breath. "Harvard Law," Veronica announced. Applause erupted. It was loud, thunderous. People cheered. Sloane smiled, a practiced, modest tilt of her head that fooled everyone but me. I knew that smile. It was the smile of the cat that had not only eaten the canary, but had also convinced the bird it was an honor to be eaten. I stood there, clapping mechanically. I knew Sloane had been applying, but I did not know the acceptance had come. No one had told me. "Harvard," Veronica repeated, letting the word hang in the air like perfume. "The Montrose legacy continues. Excellence, ambition, power." Then, the applause died down. Veronica turned her gaze toward me. The smile remained fixed on her face, but her eyes changed. The warmth evaporated, replaced by a flat, unyielding assessment. It was the look one might give a stain on a rug that refused to come out. "And then," Veronica said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate and conspiratorial, "we have Celia." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "Today is Celia's 18th birthday," Veronica said. She did not say it with joy. She said it with exhaustion, as if stating the time of death. 18 years. It is a milestone. It is the day you legally become an adult. The day you are supposed to stand on your own 2 feet. She took a sip of her wine, letting the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "Sloane is Harvard Law," Veronica said, gesturing to my sister. Then she gestured to me, her hand limp, dismissive. "And Celia? Well, Celia is Celia." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. "We all have our burdens to bear," Veronica said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Some children are wings. They lift the family up. And some children—" She looked me dead in the eye, smiling that terrible, beautiful smile. "Some children are dead weight." The air left the room. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to look shocked, to object. To say that is a horrible thing to say to your daughter, but they didn't. They looked down at their shoes. They swirled their drinks. One man cleared his throat. They were embarrassed, yes, but they were not going to step in. Veronica Montrose was too powerful, and I was too insignificant. "It is the truth," Veronica said, shrugging as if she were merely commenting on the weather. "And the truth is, A family like ours cannot fly with an anchor attached to it. Celia is nothing without us dragging her along. She has no ambition, no drive, just needs. She turned to the side table next to her. There was a thick, manila envelope sitting there. It looked out of place among the flowers and crystal decanters. "But," Veronica said, her voice brightening, "I am a generous mother. I believe in giving everyone a chance to find their own place. So, for your birthday, Celia, I have a gift." She picked up the envelope and slid it across the polished mahogany table toward me. It made a dry, rasping sound. "This is your chance to contribute," she said, "to stop being the heavy thing we have to carry. Sign this. Show us you are willing to make a sacrifice for the family that has kept you fed and clothed for 18 years. I looked at the envelope. I looked at her. "What is it?" I whispered. My voice sounded small, like a child's. "Just paperwork," Sloane cut in, her voice bored. "Legal housekeeping. Mom wants to secure the assets so my tuition is covered without any hiccups. We need to restructure the family trust. It is standard procedure when a dependent turns 18. "Open it," Veronica commanded. I reached out with trembling hands. I felt the eyes of 50 people boring into my back. I opened the flap and pulled out the stack of documents. The paper was a heavy, expensive bond. The header was thick with legal jargon, but my eyes went straight to the bottom of the first page. There, in bold, capital letters, printed in a font that looked like iron bars, were the words, "Disclaimer of interest, irrevocable," and below that notarized signature required. I knew what those words meant. I didn't need to be Harvard Law to understand irrevocable. "You want me to sign away?" "What?" I asked, looking up. "Do not be dramatic," Veronica snapped, losing her patience. The performance was over. She wanted the result. "It is just a formality. The educational trust needs to be consolidated so we can pay for Sloane without jumping through hoops. You are not going to Harvard. Celia, you do not need this capital sitting in your name doing nothing. Sign it so we can use it for someone who actually has a future." Dead weight. She had called me dead weight, and now she was asking me to cut myself loose so the balloon could rise higher. I looked at the pen she held out to me. It was a Mont Blanc, black and gold. "If you do not sign," Veronica said, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I and perhaps the first row of guests could hear, "then you are on your own. Tonight, I will not support a parasite who refuses to help her sister." I looked at Sloane. She was not looking at me. She was checking her reflection on the back of a spoon. She didn't care. To her, this was just a transaction. I was just an obstacle to be removed. I looked at the guests. The councilman was checking his watch. The neighbor was eating a shrimp puff. They were waiting for the show to end so they could go back to drinking. Something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud break. It wasn't a scream or a sob. It was the sound of a structural beam snapping deep underwater. It was the sound of the girl who wanted to be loved dying, and someone else taking her place. I realized then that this wasn't a request. It was an ambush. She had done this publicly to shame me into submission. She knew I hated confrontation. She knew I would crumble under the weight of social pressure. She was banking on my cowardice. She was right about the fear. I was terrified, but she was wrong about what the fear would make me do. "Okay," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. "Good girl," Veronica said, her shoulders relaxing. "I knew you would do the right thing." She uncapped the pen and handed it to me. I took it. The metal was cold against my skin. I did not read the rest of the document. I did not ask for a lawyer. I did not ask why the document mentioned a Redwood Fidelity Bank as a co-trustee. I just placed the paper on the table, right next to the birthday cake that no one had cut. I bent down. The ink flowed smooth and black. Celia Montrose. I signed. I dated it. I signed not because I agreed that I was nothing. I signed because I saw the trap, and I realized the only way to dismantle a trap is to trigger it while you are watching. "There," I said, capping the pen and setting it down. "Happy birthday to me." Veronica snatched the papers up immediately, checking the signature like a bank teller inspecting a check for fraud. She nodded. Satisfied, she slid the papers back into the envelope and handed them to a man in a gray suit standing near the wall, her notary. I realized he had been waiting. "Wonderful," Veronica beamed, clapping her hands once. "Now, let's cut the cake, champagne for everyone." The music started up again. The tension broke. The guests laughed and surged toward the bar. Relieved that the awkward family business was concluded, I stood alone by the fireplace. Sloane walked past me, clinking her glass against mine. "Thanks, see," she said, using a nickname she hadn't used since we were 10. "You actually made yourself useful for once." She walked away, merging into the crowd of admirers. I watched them. I watched my mother laughing with the councilman. I watched my sister preening. They thought they had just secured their future. They thought they had cut off the dead weight. But as I looked at the notary sealing the envelope, I felt a strange, cold clarity. They had forced me to sign a document that legally acknowledged I was a beneficiary. They had forced me to sign it under duress, in front of 100 witnesses, and most importantly, they had handed me the shovel, thinking I would dig my own grave. I took a sip of the warm, flat ginger ale I had been nursing. I wasn't digging a grave. I was digging a tunnel, and I was going to bring the whole house down. The silence that followed the party was heavier than the noise had ever been. By 2 a.m, the last of the luxury sedans had rolled down our long, winding driveway. The caterers had packed up their silver trays and crystal flutes, leaving the kitchen spotless, sterilized of any evidence that a celebration had occurred. My mother, Veronica, moved through the downstairs hallway, turning off lights one by one. Click, click, click. With every switch she flipped, the house felt less like a home and more like a museum shutting down for the night. I was standing by the kitchen island, drinking a glass of water, my hands still trembling slightly. I had signed the papers. I had performed my role. Now, I just wanted to go upstairs, wash the hairspray out of my curls, and sleep until I was 20. But Veronica was not done with me. She walked into the kitchen and, without a word, turned the deadbolt on the back door. Then she locked the door leading to the garage. Finally, she closed the sliding pocket door that separated the kitchen from the dining room. The latch caught with a soft, deliberate snap. It was a sound I associated with employee performance reviews at her firm, or perhaps the way a warden secures a cell. "Sit down, Celia," she said. It was not a suggestion. I sat on one of the high stools. Veronica remained standing on the other side of the island, leaning her hips against the marble counter. She looked exhausted but triumphant, like a general surveying a battlefield she had just conquered with minimal casualties. "You did well tonight," she said, though her eyes did not meet mine. She was busy examining a microscopic smudge on the granite. "The councilman was impressed with your obedience. It reflects well on the family discipline." "I signed your papers," I said, my voice raspy. "Can I go to bed now?" "We need to discuss the logistics," she said, ignoring my question. "Now that the transfer is initiated, things are going to change. Sloane will be moving to Cambridge in August. The tuition bills for Harvard Law are astronomical. We are talking about nearly $100,000 a year, not including housing, books, and networking events." She said the numbers casually, as if discussing the price of milk. "That is a lot of money," I murmured. "It is an investment," she corrected sharply, "and investments require capital. That is why the Montrose Learning Trust had to be consolidated." I frowned. The fog in my brain cleared just a fraction. "What?" Veronica stopped scrubbing the invisible spot and looked at me. Her expression was a mix of pity and irritation. "The Montrose Learning Trust, the fund your grandfather set up." "I have never heard of a trust," I said. "Grandpa Gideon left us money." Veronica laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "Oh, Celia, do not play the fool. It does not suit you. We have discussed this a dozen times. When you and Sloane were children, Father set up an educational fund, but the terms were restrictive, ridiculously so. It split the assets in a way that made them illiquid just when we needed them most." I stared at her. I had a memory like a steel trap. I remembered the exact color of the balloons at my 5th birthday party. I remembered the license plate of our old station wagon. I knew for a fact that the words Montrose Learning Trust had never been spoken in my presence. "You never told me," I said firmly. "You told me we were cash poor. You told me that is why I had to go to public school while Sloan went to private school. You said there was no extra money." "I said what you needed to hear to keep you grounded," Veronica countered seamlessly. "If you had known there was a pot of gold sitting in a bank account, you would have become lazy. Lazier than you already are. And besides, you were always so checked out. Heads in the clouds. I probably told you 5 times, and you were too busy drawing in your sketchbook to listen." She was doing it again, reshaping reality, folding the edges of the past until they fit the narrative she needed. For a second, I actually doubted myself. Had I missed it? Was I really that oblivious? Regardless, Veronica pressed on, sensing my hesitation. "The money is not for buying clothes or frivolous gap years. It is for education. Real education. Sloan got into Harvard. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this family. The trust does not have enough liquidity to cover her fully if the assets remain divided between the two of you. By signing that disclaimer, you allowed the bank to release the hold on your portion. It consolidates the pot. It goes to the person who can actually use it." She looked at me pointedly. "You are barely scraping by with a B average in community college prep classes. Celia, let us be honest. You do not need $100,000 for whatever it is you plan to do. Make coffee." The insult landed softly, but it went deep. "So I just gave Sloan my inheritance?" I asked. "You contributed to the family's success," she corrected. "And do not think you are walking away empty-handed. I am allowing you to stay in this house, rent-free, through the summer. I am keeping you on my health insurance until you are 26. That is worth thousands." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a low, steel whisper. "But let me be clear. Celia, that signature tonight was a binding agreement. If you had made a scene, if you had refused, well, 18 is the legal age of independence. I would have had your bags on the curb before the last guest left the driveway. You would have been homeless in Hawthorne Ridge within the hour." My stomach turned over. It wasn't just a threat. It was a contingency plan she had clearly already mapped out. "So," she stood up straight, brushing imaginary dust off her gown. "You made the smart choice. You bought yourself a roof over your head. Keep being a good girl, and we will get along fine." She unlocked the pocket door and swept out of the room, leaving me alone with the hum of the refrigerator. I went upstairs, but I did not sleep. My phone had been buzzing on my nightstand for hours. I had left it there during the party, forbidden from having it in my pocket during the event. I picked it up. The screen was lit up with notifications from the Montrose Family Connect group chat. This was a digital space occupied by my mother, Sloan, 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and a scattering of cousins. Usually, it was used for sharing holiday photos or coordinating Thanksgiving. Tonight, it was a shrine to Sloan, Aunt Brenda. "So proud of our Harvard girl, you looked stunning tonight." Sloan. "Cousin Mark, Harvard Law." "That is huge. Drinks are on me next time you are in the city." Sloan. "Thanks, everyone. It still feels surreal. So grateful for the support." Mother. "She earned every bit of it. Hard work pays off." I scrolled down. I wanted to see if anyone had mentioned me, if anyone wished me a happy birthday. There were no birthday wishes, but there were messages about me. Aunt Brenda. "Was Celia okay tonight? She seemed a bit quiet during the toast." Mother. "Oh, you know Celia. She gets very sensitive when the spotlight isn't on her. I think she was just overwhelmed by the caliber of the guests." Sloan. "She's fine. She did the right thing in the end. Mom handled it perfectly." Aunt Corinne. "Well, at least she didn't make a scene. It is generous of you to keep supporting her." Veronica. "Especially now that she is 18. Many parents would have cut the cord." I felt the tears prickling my eyes, hot and angry. They were talking about me as if I were a volatile pet that had been successfully tranquilized. Then, a separate notification popped up. It was a direct message from Uncle Mitch. Mitch was my father's brother, a man who usually stayed out of Veronica's way. He was the one who usually slipped me $20 at Christmas when my mother wasn't looking. Uncle Mitch. Hey kid, good job tonight. Your mom told us last week that you were going to sign the papers to help Sloan. I know it must sting, but don't worry. It is better not to have the pressure of that money hanging over you. Don't make a fuss. Okay, just keep your head down. I stared at the screen. Last week, my mother had told the entire extended family that I was going to sign the papers a week before she even presented them to me. The ambush wasn't just tonight. The ambush had been orchestrated, rehearsed, and marketed to the family long before I ever saw the notary. They knew, all of them knew I was walking into a slaughter, and they just watched to see if I would bleed. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't drinking the Montrose Kool-Aid. I opened my contacts and scrolled to Rowan. Rowan Pierce was my only real friend. We had met in 10th grade detention, me for being late, him for correcting a math teacher on a calculus error. He was studying accounting at the State University now, a guy who saw the world in spreadsheets and risk assessments. He had zero patience for drama, and even less for my mother. I hit a call. It was 2:30 in the morning, but I knew he would be up. Rowan functioned on caffeine and insomnia. Montrose, he answered on the second ring. His voice was gravelly. If you are calling me at this hour, either you killed someone or you finally escaped Alcatraz. I signed something, I said. I didn't even say hello. Rowan, I think I made a mistake. I told him everything. I told him about the party, the toast, the dead weight comment, and the envelope. I told him about the kitchen conversation and the threats of homelessness. I told him about the Montrose Learning Trust. For a long time, there was only the sound of him typing furiously on a keyboard on the other end of the line. Wait, Rowan said, the typing stopping abruptly. She made you sign a disclaimer of interest, specifically that term. Yes, she said it was to consolidate the funds for Sloan. And she did it in front of a crowd. Yes, she made a speech about it. Rowan let out a low whistle. Celia, listen to me very carefully. Rich people do not discuss money in public. It is the first rule of the club. If your mother, a woman who cares more about appearances than she cares about oxygen, publicly humiliated you to get that signature, it is not because she wanted to teach you a lesson. Then why? I asked, gripping the phone. Because she needed witnesses, Rowan said. His voice was cold, analytical. She created a high-pressure environment where you would sign quickly to make the pain stop. But she did it in front of 50 pillars of the community so she can prove you did it willingly and with family support. If you ever try to contest it later, it is a theater, but it is a legal theater. She said I was dead weight, I whispered. She said I didn't need the money. That is the emotional hook, Rowan said dismissively. Ignore the insults. Look at the logistics. If the trust was just for education and she is the trustee, she could have just moved the money. Trustees have discretion. The fact that she needed your signature, and she needed it badly enough to stage a birthday execution, means one thing. What? It means the money wasn't hers to move, Rowan said. It means you weren't just a secondary beneficiary. Celia, you were probably a co-owner, or worse for her, maybe you were the primary. I sat up straight in bed. The moonlight was streaming in through the window, casting long prison bar shadows across my duvet. She said I was stupid, I said, the realization dawning on me. She kept saying I was oblivious. That is the distraction, Rowan said. If they treat you like you are dumb, you stop looking for the smart details. You said the paper mentioned a bank, a co-trustee. Redwood Fidelity Bank, I said. Okay, Rowan said. I heard the click of a mouse. Tomorrow, you are not going to look for a job. You are going to go find that paper. Did you keep a copy? No, I said, feeling a surge of panic. She took it immediately. Of course she did, Rowan sighed. Okay, did you take a picture? Did you glance at it long enough to see a file number? No, I admitted. I just wanted it to be over. Fine, we do it the hard way, Rowan said. But Celia, remember this. If a document is clean, they slide it across a desk in a private office with a cup of coffee. If the document is dirty, they put a gun to your head. Tonight, the gun was social suicide. That paper is not clean, and we are going to find out why. I hung up the phone. I looked at the group chat one last time. Sloan had just posted a selfie with the Harvard Law banner. My mother had hearted it. They thought I was asleep. They thought I was defeated. They thought I was dead weight. I got out of bed and walked over to my desk. I pulled out a fresh notebook. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the time. I wrote down Redwood Fidelity Bank. Rowan was right. They had buried me under a mountain of shame, hoping I would suffocate. But they forgot that pressure is also how you make diamonds, and I was just starting to harden. The morning after the party, the house felt like a crime scene that had been scrubbed clean. The streamers were gone. The crystal glasses were back in the cabinet. The only evidence that my 18th birthday had happened was the thick manila envelope sitting on the marble kitchen island, right next to my mother's espresso machine. It was waiting to be filed, or mailed, or whatever it was that Veronica Montrose did with legal victories. I walked into the kitchen, my head throbbing from a lack of sleep. Veronica was already there, typing on her tablet, dressed in a sharp gray blazer. She looked up at me, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of rebellion. "Good morning," she said, her voice brisk. "I am heading to the office. I left the envelope there. The notary needs one more initial on page 4. I missed it last night in the chaos. Sign it, and I will courier it out this afternoon." My heart did a strange double beat. One more initial. That was my opening. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice flat. "I will take care of it. Do you mind if I take it to my room? The light is better, and I want to read through it one more time, just to understand what I gave up." Veronica paused. She took a sip of her black coffee, studying me over the rim of the mug. I held my breath, forcing my shoulders to slump, playing the part of the defeated daughter she wanted to see. "Fine," she said, setting the mug down. "Do not take all day. The courier comes at 2:00. She grabbed her keys and walked out the door. The moment the garage door rumbled shut, I snatched the envelope off the counter and ran up the stairs to my bedroom. I locked the door. I sat at my desk and poured the contents of the envelope out. For the first time, I actually really looked at the papers I had blindly agreed to the night before. The document was thick, bound with a heavy staple. I flipped past the cover page, ignoring the disclaimer of interest title that made my stomach turn. I started scanning the fine print, looking for the names Rowan had told me to find. Clause 1, Clause 2, definitions. Then, halfway down page 3, I found it. Trust name, the Montrose Learning Trust. Grantor Gideon Montrose. Co-trustee Redwood Fidelity Bank. I stared at the name of the bank. Redwood Fidelity. It was not a local branch. It was a private wealth management firm, the kind that had mahogany lobbies and required appointments just to walk through the front door. I kept reading. My finger traced the lines until it stopped at a section titled Beneficiary Acknowledgement. The language was dense, full of hereby and aforementioned, but one sentence stood out clearly. The beneficiary acknowledges receipt of the full accounting of trust assets and waives the right to contest the valuation. Receipt of full accounting, I whispered to the empty room. I had not received an accounting. I had not seen a single number. I had been handed a pen and an insult. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from Sloan. "Just sign the missing page. See? Don't be difficult. At least this way I can tell people you helped me. It is the one useful thing you've done." I looked at the message. Dead weight. She was reinforcing the narrative, hammering it in so I would not question reality. I did not reply. Instead, I grabbed my backpack. I shoved the papers inside, put on a hoodie, and slipped out the back door. I could not do this here. The house felt like it had ears. I walked 3 miles to the public library on 4th Street. It was quiet, smelling of old paper and dust. I found a corner table in the back, behind the biography section, and pulled out my laptop. I typed disclaimer of interest into the search bar. The results are loaded. A legal document in which a beneficiary voluntarily gives up their right to inherit assets. Voluntarily, the screen glared back at me. If I signed this, I was telling the law that I did not want the money, that I was choosing to walk away. It would make everything Veronica did legal. It would wash her hands clean. My phone rang. It was Rowan. "Did you find it?" he asked. No pleasantries. "Redwood Fidelity Bank," I said, keeping my voice low. "And the trust is called the Montrose Learning Trust. Rowan, there is a clause that says I acknowledge receiving a full accounting, but I never saw any numbers." "Do not sign that page," Rowan said, his voice sharp. "Celia, listen to me. If you sign a waiver saying you saw the numbers when you didn't, you are closing the door on yourself. You are legally saying, I know what this is worth, and I don't want it. You need to see the numbers." "Mom expects the papers by 2 o'clock, I said, checking the time. It was already 11 o'clock. "Forget your mom," Rowan said. "Call the bank. Now." I hung up. My hands were sweating. I dialed the number for Redwood Fidelity Bank that I found on their website. "Redwood Fidelity. How may I direct your call?" A woman's voice, cool and professional. I am calling about a trust," I stammered. I took a breath and tried to channel Veronica's imperious tone. "My name is Celia Montrose. I am a beneficiary of the Montrose Learning Trust. I have some questions about the documents I was sent." There was a pause. I heard typing. "One moment. Ms. Montrose," the woman said. Her tone shifted slightly. It wasn't warmer, but it was more alert. "I see your file here. You are listed as a primary beneficiary alongside Sloane Montrose. Primary, not secondary, not dead weight, primary." "Yes," I said. "I was wondering if I could come in. To review the accounting, I have the papers here, but I think some pages are missing. Policy dictates that all beneficiaries are entitled to an annual review," the woman said. "However, the trustee that would be your mother, Veronica Montrose, usually handles these requests." "I know," I said, "but I want to come in myself. Today. Is that allowed?" The silence stretched for 5 seconds. It felt like an hour. "If you are 18 years of age and a named beneficiary," the woman said slowly, "you have the right to request a direct meeting with the trust officer. We have an opening on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock with Mr. Henderson. Would you like to book it?" "Yes," I said. "Please. I will send a confirmation email now. Please bring 2 forms of identification." I hung up. A moment later, a notification pinged on my screen. Subject: Beneficiary Review Appointment. Montrose Learning Trust. I stared at the email. It was real. The bank recognized me. To them. I wasn't the failure of the family. I was a client. I looked down at the papers spread out on the library table. A strange, cold feeling washed over me. If the trust was just a simple education fund, why did Veronica have to stage a public execution to get me to sign it away if the money was tight, as she always claimed? Why was there a private bank involved? You don't hire Redwood Fidelity to manage a piggy bank, and you don't humiliate your daughter in front of the entire town unless you are terrified of what she might find if she starts reading the fine print. I packed the papers back into the envelope. I wasn't going to sign the missing initial. Not yet. I had an appointment. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one answering the questions. I was going to be the one asking them. I walked back into the house with the envelope tucked under my arm, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs that I prayed my mother could not hear. The appointment with Redwood Fidelity was set for 2 days from now, but I still had to survive the next 48 hours in the lion's den. To do that, I had to become exactly what Veronica Montrose wanted me to be: compliant, apologetic, and small. I found her in the sunroom, arranging white lilies in a crystal vase. The air smelled of expensive pollen and floor wax. She did not look up when I entered. She let me stand there for a full minute, a power move designed to remind me that my presence was tolerated, not required. "I am sorry," I said. My voice was quiet, practiced. I had rehearsed this line in the mirror of the library bathroom 3 times. I was being selfish last night. I read the papers again. I understand now that you are just trying to protect the family assets for Sloane. She is the one with the big future. Veronica paused. She snipped a stem with a sharp metallic click. She turned to me, her face softening into that terrifying mask of maternal benevolence she wore when she was getting her way. "Oh, Celia," she sighed, setting down the shears. "I knew you would come around. You just need a little time to process things. It is a lot for a girl like you to understand." "It is," I agreed, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. "I want to help. I do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden when you do what you are told," she said, walking over and placing a hand on my cheek. Her palm was cold. "In fact, I have a little something for you, a peace offering." She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a long, slender velvet box. She handed it to me. I opened it. Inside lay a fountain pen, heavy and black with gold accents. It was beautiful, and it probably cost more than my car. "Use this," she said. "When you sign the final page, it is a grown-up pen for a grown-up decision." I stared at the pen. It was a bribe. It was a shiny trinket to distract the magpie while she stole the nest, but I forced a smile. "Thank you, Mom," I said. "It is beautiful." "Good," she said, checking her watch. "Now, give me the envelope. I will sign the witness line and get it to the courier." This was the pivot point. If I gave her the papers now, she would see I hadn't initiated the missing page yet. Or worse, she would rush it off before I could execute the next phase of my plan. I needed to stall, but I had to stall in a way that made me look even more obedient. "Actually," I said, looking down at the pen, "I was thinking, if this is a legal document, and it is going to a bank, should we not do it properly? Like, with a notary present for the final signature? I do not want the bank to reject it because I messed up the procedure. Sloane would want it done perfectly, right?" I saw the gear turn in her head. I had invoked the magic name Sloane, and I had appealed to her obsession with appearances. Veronica Montrose never did anything halfway. "That is actually very responsible of you, Celia," she said, looking pleasantly surprised. "You are right. We do not want any clerical errors holding up the funds. I will schedule an appointment with the notary at Larkwell Plaza for tomorrow afternoon. We can go together." "Perfect," I said. "I will keep the papers safe in my room until then." "Fine," she said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "Do not lose them." I walked up the stairs, my knees shaking. I had bought myself 24 hours. Once I was inside my room, I locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle. I was done taking chances. I took out my phone and laid every single page of the document on my desk. Smoothing them out flat, I photographed everything, every clause, every page number, every tiny footer text that said, "Drafted by V. Montrose, Esca." I uploaded the images to a cloud drive I had created 10 minutes ago with a password I knew my mother would never guess the name of the street where my father lived before he died, a detail she had deleted from her memory years ago. Then, I zipped the files and emailed them to Rowan. "Celia. Full copy attached. Don't open it on school Wi-Fi. Keep it safe. Rowan." Received. I am looking at page 4 right now. "Celia. This indemnification clause is insane. She is basically absolving herself of any past mismanagement. You need a lawyer, a real one." "I know," I whispered to the screen. I had work in an hour. I worked part-time at Stonebridge Claims Records, a dreary medical billing archival firm on the edge of town. It was mind-numbing work, filing paper claims into metal cabinets that smelled of rust and old coffee. But it paid $15 an hour. And my mother didn't know how much I had saved. I needed that money. If this blew up in my face, I was going to need a motel room. I arrived at work 10 minutes early. The office was a sea of beige cubicles under humming fluorescent lights. I sat down at my station and started sorting invoices, but my hands were clumsy. I dropped a stack of files. "Whoa there. Steady hands," a voice croaked from the next cubicle. It was Mrs. Gable. She was 60 years old, wore cardigans that smelled like peppermint, and had been working at Stonebridge since before I was born. She saw everything, but she rarely spoke about anything other than her cats or the weather. I knelt to pick up the papers. "Sorry, Mrs. Gable, just a lot on my mind." She rolled her chair over, peering at me over her bifocals. "You look like you are waiting for a ceiling tile to fall on your head." "Honey, it was your birthday yesterday." "Right, 18. "Yeah," I said, stacking the files. 18 is supposed to be fun," she said. "You look like you are planning a funeral." I paused. I liked Mrs. Gable. She was safe. She had no connection to Hawthorne Ridge Society. "My mom wants me to sign a legal document," I said, keeping it vague. "To give up some money for my sister. She says it is standard, but it feels wrong." Mrs. Gable's face hardened. The sweet grandmother vibe evaporated, replaced by the look of a woman who had seen decades of insurance fraud and bad divorces pass across her desk. "Nothing is standard when it comes to giving away money. Celia," she said sharply, "is there a lawyer looking at it for you?" "My mom is a lawyer," I said. "That is not a lawyer. That is the opposition." Mrs. Gable said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tattered business card. "My niece volunteers at the community center downtown. Legal aid. They do walk-ins on Tuesdays. That is today. Go see her. Her name is Marianne." "I can't afford a lawyer," I said. "Pro bono means free, honey," Mrs. Gable said, pressing the card into my hand. "Go. I will punch out for you later. Tell the manager you had a female emergency. Men are too scared to ask follow-up questions about that." I stared at the card. Marianne Klein, J.D. I left work 20 minutes later. The community center was a brick building that had seen better days, wedged between a laundromat and a discount tire store. It was a far cry from the marble-floored offices my mother inhabited. The waiting room was full of people looking tired and anxious. I waited an hour. Finally, a woman in a linen suit that had seen a long day called my name. Marianne Klein looked sharp, efficient, and entirely unglamorous. She led me into a small office that was overflowing with file folders. "Okay, Celia," she said, sitting down and gesturing to the chair opposite her. "My aunt says you are being pressured to sign something. Let me see it." I pulled up the photos on my phone. Marianne put on her glasses and started scrolling. She didn't speak for a long time. She frowned, zoomed in, swiped, and frowned again. "This is aggressive," she finally said, looking up. "Is your mother the trustee?" "Yes. And she is asking you to sign a disclaimer of interest under the guise of family duty." "She called me dead weight," I said. "She did it in front of 50 people. She said if I didn't sign, I would be out of the house." Marianne took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Listen to me, Celia. This is what we call coercion. In a perfect world, we would take this to court and have it thrown out. But that takes time, money, and you would be homeless while we fought it. So I have to sign it," I said, feeling the hope drain out of me. "No," Marianne said. "You have to be smart. This document has a flaw. It relies on the assumption that you are intimidated. Look here." She pointed to the screen. "It says you acknowledge receiving a full accounting," she said. "But you haven't. If you refuse to sign, she kicks you out, and you have no resources to fight. But if you do sign, you become a party to the contract. And as a party to the contract who has just signed a document stating you saw the numbers, you have the immediate legal standing to demand to see those numbers to verify your own signature." I blinked. "I do not understand." "It is a pivot," Marianne said, leaning forward. "She is using the signature to lock you out. We are going to use the signature to get you in. You sign the paper. You let her think she has won. You let her file it. And the very second that document is notarized, you are officially a disclaiming beneficiary who has the right to verify the assets you just gave up. You have an appointment with the bank." "Thursday," I said. Before the notary appointment. Actually, no. Wait. The notary is tomorrow. The bank is Thursday. Even better, Marianne said. You sign tomorrow. You play the good daughter. You let her think the door is closed. Then on Thursday, you walk into that bank with your copy of the notarized form, and you tell them, I signed this, but I need to verify the accounting attached to it because my copy was incomplete. They cannot deny you. It is federal law. She will kill me, I whispered. She is already trying to erase you, Marianne said, her voice hard. She is counting on you walking away. She is counting on you thinking that the signature is the end. It is not. It is the receipt. And once you have the receipt, you can audit the purchase. She handed my phone back to me. Go to the notary, Marianne instructed. Be polite, be quiet, sign your name, but when you sign, I want you to add a tiny, almost invisible notation next to your signature. Put UR in small letters. UR. Under review. Marianne said, It is subtle. She won't notice it. The bank might not even notice it immediately. But if we ever have to go to court, it is a signal that you were not done asking questions. I stood up. The fear was still there, churning in my stomach, but it was different now. It was cold. It was usable. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me yet, Marianne said grimly. When you pull this thread, the whole sweater is going to unravel. Are you ready for what you might find underneath? I thought about the way Veronica had looked at me when she gave me the pen, like I was a transaction she had successfully closed. Yes, I said. I am ready. I walked out of the community center and into the late afternoon sun. I had a plan. I had a lawyer. And tomorrow, I was going to sign my name on the dotted line. I was going to give Veronica exactly what she wanted, so I could take back everything she had hidden. The trap was set. Now, I just had to walk into it without flinching. Larkwell Plaza was a sad L-shaped strip mall about 15 minutes from our house, anchored by a discount grocery store and a vape shop. The notary office was sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. It smelled faintly of chemical solvents and stale coffee. My mother, Veronica Montrose, walked in like she was entering the Supreme Court. Her heels clicked sharply on the linoleum floor, a sound that usually commanded immediate attention. Behind her, Sloane followed, wearing oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky, carrying herself with the bored, haughty air of a celebrity forced to endure the DMV. I brought up the rear. I was wearing jeans and the hoodie I had worn to the library, my backpack slung over one shoulder. I felt invisible, which was exactly how I needed to be. We have an appointment, Veronica announced to the man behind the counter. Montrose, 3 o'clock. The notary was a middle-aged man with a stained tie and a name tag that read, Kevin. He looked up from a computer solitaire game, unimpressed by Veronica's designer handbag. ID, Kevin said, holding out a hand. I am Veronica Montrose, my mother said, her tone icy. I called yesterday. I still need ID, ma'am, Kevin said, not blinking. State law, all signers, and witnesses. Veronica let out a huff of irritation. Digging into her purse, she slapped her driver's license onto the laminate counter. Sloane did the same, sighing loudly as if lifting the plastic card was a great physical exertion. And you? Kevin looked at me. I handed him my license. He scrutinized it, then looked at my face, then back at the license. Happy belated birthday, he mumbled, sliding it back to me. Thank you, I said softly. Let's get this over with, Veronica snapped. She pulled the manila envelope from her bag and slid the documents onto the counter. I need the signature on page 10 notarized. It is a disclaimer of interest. Standard Family Trust restructuring. Kevin adjusted his glasses and pulled the stack of papers toward him. He flipped through them slowly, licking his thumb to turn the pages. Every second he took seemed to vibrate with tension. I watched Veronica's hands. They were clenched at her sides. She was nervous, not scared. Veronica didn't get scared, but anxious to close the deal. Okay, Kevin said. Ms. Celia Montrose, you are the singer. Yes, I said. And you understand what you are signing. You are voluntarily waiving your rights to the assets listed in Schedule A. Yes, I said. I did not look at Schedule A. I didn't need to. I knew what I was doing. All right, sign here, and here. He pointed to 3 X marks stamped in red ink. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the fountain pen Veronica had given me. The grown-up pen. I leaned over the counter. The paper smelled like fresh toner. I could feel Sloane's eyes boring into the side of my head. She was practically vibrating with anticipation. This was her payday. This was the moment the dead weight was finally cut loose so she could soar. I signed the first line, Celia Montrose. I signed the second line, Celia Montrose. On the third line, the one right above the notary block. I paused for a fraction of a second. I remembered Marianne's voice. Make a mark. I signed my name. And then, in a fluid motion that looked like a flourish of the pen, I added 2 tiny, cramped letters right next to the tail of the E in Montrose. Your, under review. It was small. It looked like a scratch or a slip of the nib, but it was there. Done, I said, capping the pen. Kevin took the stamp and brought it down with a heavy thud. The sound echoed in the small shop like a gavel. Okay, Veronica said, reaching for the papers immediately. Thank you. We will take those now. Wait, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was firm. Veronica froze, her hand hovering over the document. I need a copy, I said. Veronica turned to me, her eyes narrowing. We can make copies at home. Celia, do not waste the man's time. We have a schedule. I want a certified copy, I said, looking at Kevin, not her. This is a legal document regarding my inheritance. I want a copy with the wet stamp on it, for my records. That costs extra, Kevin said, looking between us. $2 per page. I have cash, I said, reaching for my wallet. Celia, Veronica hissed, stepping close to me. Her perfume was overpowering. You are being ridiculous. I am the trustee. I will keep the originals in the safe. You do not need to carry this around. The lawyer I spoke to said I should always keep my own records. I lied smoothly. You always told me to be responsible. Mom, I am just being responsible. Veronica's face twitched. She couldn't argue with responsibility in front of a stranger without looking suspicious, and she couldn't drag me out of there without making a scene, which was the one thing she hated more than losing money. Fine, she spat. Pay him. I handed Kevin a $20 bill. He ran the copies. The machine whirred and clicked, a rhythmic, grinding noise that filled the silence. Sloane rolled her eyes. My God, Celia, you act like it is the Magna Carta. It is just you admitting you are broke. I ignored her. Kevin stapled the copy and handed it to me. I checked the last page. The stamp was there. My signature was there. And the tiny UR was there. Faint but legible. Thank you, I said to Kevin. I put the papers carefully into my backpack. Veronica snatched the originals. Let's go. We walked out into the parking lot. The air felt heavy, charged with the impending storm. As soon as the glass door of the notary shop closed behind us, Veronica stopped. She turned to me. The mask of the concerned mother dropped completely. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated disdain. You really are a piece of work, she said, making a scene for over $2. I just wanted a copy, I said, staring at the asphalt. Well, you have it, she said. Frame it. Put it on your wall. Let it remind you that today was the day you finally made yourself useful. She opened the door of her Mercedes, but before she got in, she looked over the roof of the car at me. You know, she said, a cruel little smile playing on her lips, I was worried you would fight me, but I'm glad you didn't. It shows growth. Finally, you know your place. You accepted who you are. Dead weight. Yes, I said, looking her in the eye. I know exactly who I am. She got in the car. Sloane got in the passenger seat. I climbed into the back. The ride home was suffocating. Veronica turned on the radio to a classical station, humming along to Vivaldi as if she hadn't just bullied her daughter into financial ruin. Sloane was tapped into her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Oh, perfect," Sloane said, laughing. "The likes are already blowing up." "What did you post?" Veronica asked, glancing at her. "Just a little update," Sloane said. "Check the family group." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Sloane had posted a photo on Instagram and cross-posted it to the family chat. It was a picture of the acceptance letter from Harvard Law, or at least, the header of it lying on the marble kitchen counter next to a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Sacrifices were made, but the dream is alive. Thankful for a family that knows where the future lies. Harvard Law, next, chapter legacy." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Sacrifices were made. She was talking about me. I was the sacrifice. She was bragging about cannibalizing her own sister. I didn't react. I just looked out the window as the familiar manicured lawns of Hawthorne Ridge rolled by. They looked different to me now. They looked like stage sets. My phone buzzed again. A text from Rowan. "Rowan. Are you out, Celia?" "Yes. Signed. Got the copy. She has the originals." Rowan. "Good. Now, look at the photo Sloane just posted. Don't look at the champagne." "Look at the letter." I frowned. I opened the image again and zoomed in. Rowan. "I have seen real Harvard acceptance letters. Celia, my cousin got one last year. The font on the header is Garamond. The one in Sloane's picture, that is Times New Roman. And look at the crest. The resolution is off. It has pixelated edges." I stared at the screen. The tiny red shield at the top of the paper did look slightly fuzzy, while the rest of the photo was crisp. Rowan. "That is a template. I found the exact same one on a Prank Your Friends website. It is a fake, Celia, a bad one." My breath hitched. If the letter was fake, then she hadn't gotten in. And if she hadn't gotten in, then why did they need the money for tuition? "Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the Vivaldi. "When does Sloane leave for Cambridge?" Sloane stiffened in the front seat. Veronica glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her eyes guarded. "August," Veronica said. "Why?" "Just wondering," I said. "I want to make sure I am out of the way before she starts packing." "Don't worry," Sloane said, her voice tight. "I will be gone before you know it." She sounded defensive, fearful. I looked at the back of her head, the perfect bun, the expensive highlights. It was all a costume. Sloane wasn't a shark. She was a parrot, repeating whatever lines Veronica fed her. But why fake an acceptance to impress the neighbors? To get the trust money released, if there was no tuition to pay. Where was the $100,000 a year going to go? We pulled into the driveway. The house loomed over us, a massive brick fortress of secrets. "I am going to my room," I said as soon as the car stopped. "Fine," Veronica said. "Dinner is at 7. Try to look less miserable." I ran up the stairs. I needed to look at the documents again. I needed to see exactly where the money was supposed to flow. I locked my door and threw my backpack on the bed. I pulled out the certified copy of the disclaimer. The UR next to my name looked like a tiny act of rebellion. My phone pinged with an email notification. From Redwood Fidelity Bank. Automated service subject appointment. Confirmation document access. Dear Ms. Montrose, this email confirms your appointment with Senior Trust Officer Arthur Henderson for Thursday, June 14th, at 10:00 a.m. Per your request as a verified beneficiary, we have prepared the preliminary digital docket for your review. Please note the full trust statement. History of transactions 2020 to 2024 is now available in your secure portal. I sat down in my desk chair. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. History of transactions. Veronica thought she had just closed the book on the Montrose Learning Trust. She thought the signature I gave her in that strip mall notary office was the final seal. She didn't know that she had just handed me the key to the vault. I opened the laptop. I clicked the link. I entered the temporary password the bank had sent. The screen is loaded. A spinning wheel. I waited. And then, the numbers appeared. I didn't scream. I didn't gasp. I just stared. Because the first thing I saw wasn't a balance for Harvard tuition. It was a withdrawal, a massive one, dated 3 weeks ago, and the recipient wasn't a university. I leaned closer to the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. "Got you," I whispered. The dead weight was about to start pulling, and I was going to pull everything down with me. Redwood Fidelity Bank was not a place for people who clipped coupons. It was a fortress of polished mahogany, hushed voices, and carpet so thick it felt like walking on a cloud. I walked in at 10 o'clock sharp on Thursday morning, wearing my only blazer, a thrift store find that I had steamed twice, and carrying a leather portfolio I had borrowed from Marianne. Marianne walked beside me, not as the frazzled public defender from the community center, but as Marianne Klein, legal counsel for the beneficiary. She wore a navy suit that meant business, and she carried a briefcase that looked heavy enough to crack a skull. "Remember," she murmured as we approached the reception desk, "you are not asking for permission. You are conducting an audit." "I know," I said. My palms were sweating, but my face was stone. We were ushered into a private conference room that smelled of lemon oil and money. Mr. Henderson, the senior trust officer, was waiting for us. He was a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked at me, then at Marianne, and finally at the UR notation on the copy of the disclaimer I placed on the table. "Ms. Montrose," Henderson said, clasping his hands. "We received the notarized disclaimer from your mother yesterday via courier. However, your notation regarding a review and your request for this meeting has put a temporary hold on the final processing. I must admit, it is an unusual procedure." "My client is diligent," Marianne said smoothly. "Before she finalizes the release of her interest in the Montrose Learning Trust, she is exercising her right to review the historical administration of the assets. We want to ensure that what she is disclaiming matches the valuation provided." "Of course," Henderson said. He tapped his computer screen. "Transparency is paramount at Redwood. I have pulled the files dating back to the inception of the trust by your grandfather, Gideon Montrose." He slid a heavy binder across the table. I opened it. The first page was a copy of the original trust deed, signed 15 years ago. I saw my grandfather's signature spiky, forceful. I felt a sudden lump in my throat. He had died when I was 10. I remembered him giving me peppermint candies and telling me I had smart eyes. "The trust was established with an initial principal of $500,000, Henderson explained, "to be divided equally between Sloan and Celia Montrose upon the younger beneficiary attaining the age of 18. The primary purpose was higher education." $500,000. My breath hitched. That was $250,000 for me. That wasn't just tuition. That was a house. That was life. "And the current balance?" Marianne asked, her pen hovering over her notepad. "Approximately $12,000, Henderson said. The room went dead silent. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling. "$12,000. Where is the rest?" "As you can see from the transaction history," Henderson said, flipping to a tab marked Disbursements. "There have been significant withdrawals over the past 4 years. The trustee, Mrs. Veronica Montrose, has discretionary power to access funds for educational preparation and associated expenses prior to the vesting date." I looked at the ledger. It was a slaughterhouse. The withdrawals started small, $5,000 here, $3,000 there. But then, starting 2 years ago, they ballooned. January 12th, $25,000. Recipient Apex Test Prep Solutions. March 4th, $15,000. Recipient Global Scholars Consulting. August 20th, $45,000. Recipient V, INP, Admissions Strategy Group. I ran my finger down the list. "LSAT Prep doesn't cost $25,000, I whispered. "And what is VIP, Admissions Strategy?" "Educational consulting is a broad category," Henderson said defensively. "The bank does not audit the line item value of every service, only that the trustee authorizes it." Then I saw it, the biggest single withdrawal, It was dated 6 months ago. December 15th, $75,000. Recipient Sterling Horizons, LLC. Memo program fees. Admissions consulting. Travel. $75,000, Marianne said, reading over my shoulder. For consulting Mr. Henderson, does the bank have an invoice for this? We have the authorization form, Henderson said. He pulled a sheet of paper from a separate folder. Signed by the trustee, he laid the paper down. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It read, Veronica Montrose. I stared at it. I had seen my mother's signature 1,000 times. I had seen it on report cards, on permission slips, and just 2 days ago on the disclaimer form. Her signature was sharp, angular, with a distinctive loop on the M. This signature was shaky. The M was too round. The slant was leaning to the left, not the right. That is not her signature, I said. Henderson frowned. I beg your pardon. I know my mother's handwriting, I said, looking up at him. That looks like someone trying to copy it, or someone signing it while their hand was shaking. It doesn't match the signature on the trust deed. Marianne leaned in, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. Mr. Henderson, I would like to request a signature verification. Compare this authorization for the $75,000 withdrawal against the specimen signature card you have on file for Mrs. Montrose. That is a serious accusation, Henderson said, his demeanor stiffening. It is a serious amount of money, Marianne countered, and if my client is disclaiming her interest based on the belief that the funds were used legitimately for her sister's education, but they were actually siphoned off by a third party or authorized fraudulently, then the disclaimer is void. We need a review. Henderson looked at the document, then back at us. The corporate polish was cracking. He saw the potential liability. I will initiate an internal review, he said tightly. It will take 48 hours. We also need to see where this money went, I said, pointing to Sterling Horizons, LLC. $75,000 to a company that sounds like a shell corporation. Did you verify the beneficiary of that wire transfer? We follow standard Know Your Customer protocols, Henderson said, closing the folder. I cannot discuss the details of third-party accounts, but I will flag the transaction for the compliance team. We walked out of the bank 20 minutes later. The sun was shining, but I felt cold. Sterling Horizons, Marianne said as we stood on the sidewalk. I am going to run that name, but Celia, you saw what wasn't there, right? Harvard, I said. Exactly. Nearly $400,000 drained in 2 years for prep and consulting, but not a single check written to Harvard University for tuition, housing, or a deposit. If she gets in, where's the deposit? Maybe she hasn't paid it yet, I suggested, though I didn't believe it. Deadlines for acceptance deposits are usually May 1st, Marianne said. It is June. If Sloan is going to Harvard in the fall, money should have moved directly to the school by now. I pulled out my phone. I am going to ask them. Ask who? Harvard. I sat on a bench outside the bank and drafted the email. I kept it professional, stripping away all the emotion. To Office of the Registrar, Harvard Law School, Subject Enrollment Verification, Sloan Montrose. To whom it may concern, I am writing to verify the enrollment status of Sloan Montrose for the upcoming fall semester. I am assisting with a family trust matter and need to confirm that matriculation is active for the release of educational funds. Thank you. Celia Montrose. I hit send. Now what? I asked Marianne. Now, she said, adjusting her briefcase strap. You go home and act like everything is normal. Let the bank do the work. If that signature is forged, or if that money went somewhere it shouldn't have, the bank will freeze everything to protect themselves. You just need to be safe when the ice cracks. But safety was not waiting for me at home. When I pulled into the driveway an hour later, I saw boxes on the front porch. My boxes. My stomach dropped. I parked my beat-up sedan and ran up the steps, my clothes, my books, my old sketchbook. They were all piled in haphazard cardboard boxes taped shut with aggressive amounts of duct tape. The front door opened. Veronica stood there. She wasn't wearing her business suit. She was wearing casual clothes, her arms crossed, her face hard. "What is this?" I asked, gesturing to the pile. "You graduated high school 2 weeks ago," Veronica said. "You turned 18 this week, and you signed the papers declaring you are independent." "I signed papers saying I didn't want the trust money," I said. "I didn't say I was moving out today." "Well, plans change," she said coldly. "Sloan needs more space to prepare for law school. She needs a quiet environment. And frankly, Celia, your energy in this house is toxic. You moping around, playing the victim, it is distracting your sister." "Distracting her from what?" I shot back. "She isn't doing anything except taking selfies." Veronica's eyes flashed. "She is preparing for the most rigorous academic program in the country. She needs your room for a study office. I told you, dead weight gets cut. You are an adult now. Go be one." She tossed a set of keys at me. They weren't house keys. They were my car keys, the spare set she usually kept. "I paid the insurance through the end of the month," she said. "After that, it is your bill. Do not come back unless you are invited." She stepped back and slammed the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I heard the lock turn. I stood there on the porch of the only home I had ever known, surrounded by the debris of my life. I wanted to cry. I wanted to pound on the door and scream. But then I remembered the ledger. $12,000 left. She wasn't kicking me out because she needed a study office. She was kicking me out because she was broke. She had drained the trust, and now she was shedding costs. It was just a cost. I loaded the boxes into my car. It took 3 trips. The suspension groaned under the weight. I drove to the north side of town, near the industrial park where Stonebridge Claims Records was located. I had seen a "for rent" sign in the window of a small duplex a few days ago. It wasn't much. It was a room above a detached garage, smelling faintly of motor oil and damp wood. The landlord was a guy named Miller who took $300 cash for the first month and didn't ask for a credit check. "It has a hot plate and a sink," Miller said, handing me a key that looked rusty. "The shower is downstairs in the mudroom. Don't park in front of the driveway." "It is perfect," I said. That night, I sat on a mattress on the floor, eating instant noodles made with water from the bathroom tap. My phone was plugged into the single outlet, glowing in the dark. I was exhausted. My back ached from hauling boxes, but I felt a strange sense of lightness. I was out. I was truly, completely out. Then, at 9 o'clock, my phone pinged. It wasn't a text from Rowan. It was an email notification. From Redwood Fidelity Bank. Compliance Department Priority High. Dear Ms. Montrose, following the inquiry initiated during your visit today, our internal audit team has flagged several transactions within the Montrose Learning Trust for irregularity. Specifically, the signature on the authorization dated December 15th has failed our initial biometric comparison. Effective immediately, all assets within the trust are frozen pending a full investigation. We have attempted to contact the trustee, Mrs. Veronica Montrose. Regarding this matter, I stared at the screen. Frozen. Veronica had probably just received the same call. She was probably standing in her kitchen right now, screaming at a poor bank teller, realizing that her dead-weight daughter had just reached up from the grave and grabbed her by the ankle. I took a bite of my noodles. They tasted like victory, but I wasn't done. The signature was just the first domino. The real bomb was still ticking. Another email pinged in. This one was from the registrar's office at Harvard. I opened it, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dear Ms. Montrose, thank you for your inquiry. After searching our database for the fall 2025 entering class, I read the next sentence 3 times to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. We have no record of an admitted student or an applicant named Sloan Montrose. I set the phone down on the floor. I looked around my tiny, oily room. Sloan hadn't just failed to get in. She hadn't even applied. The whole thing, the party, the toast, the Harvard lawsuits, the theft of my inheritance. It was all a lie. A $400,000 lie. And now, I have the proof. The notification light on my phone blinked incessantly, a rhythmic, pulsing red eye in the darkness of my garage apartment. I had been living above Miller's garage for 3 days, and in that time, I had become public enemy number 1 in the Montrose family digital ecosystem. I had triggered the freeze on the trust fund on Thursday. By Friday morning, Veronica had rallied the troops. She didn't know that I knew about the fake Harvard acceptance. She didn't know I had seen the ledger with the $75,000 withdrawal for consulting. All she knew was that her access to the money had been cut off, and the bank was asking questions she couldn't answer. So, she did what she always did when cornered. She changed the narrative. I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat. It was a massacre. Aunt Brenda. I cannot believe you would do this. Celia, freezing your sister's tuition money. Jealousy is an ugly disease. Cousin Mark. Sloane worked her whole life for this. You are literally stealing her future because you are mad about a toast. Grow up. Uncle Mitch. Your mom is devastated. She says you're trying to blackmail them. Just sign the release, kid. Don't tear the family apart over cash. Veronica had spun a masterpiece. In her version, I was the bitter, underachieving sister who had signed the papers and then immediately filed a frivolous claim to hold the money hostage, demanding a payout to release the funds. She painted herself as the victim of a greedy, ungrateful child who wanted to sabotage the Golden Girls' ascent to the Ivy League. I didn't reply. I let the messages pile up, each one a brick in the wall they were building between us. Then, the phone rang. It wasn't a text. It was a call from Sloane. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to hear her voice. I needed to gauge the temperature in the house I had left behind. Hello? I answered, keeping my voice neutral. You are such a bitch. Sloane spat. There was no preamble. No, hello. Her voice was high, tight, vibrating with a frequency that sounded like glass about to shatter. Do you have any idea what you have done? Mom is in the kitchen crying. She can't pay the deposit vendor because the accounts are locked. The deposit vendor? I asked, leaning back against the cold wall. You mean the university? Why would you pay a vendor for a tuition deposit? Sloane. There was a sharp silence on the other end. Sloane stumbled. I mean the service, the housing coordinator. It doesn't matter. You are ruining everything. I thought I was dead weight, I said calmly. Dead weight just sits there. Sloane, it doesn't freeze bank accounts. Unless, of course, the people carrying the weight are trying to run a marathon with a broken leg. You think you are so smart, Sloane hissed. But the arrogance was thin. Beneath the anger, I heard terror. You are going to withdraw that complaint, Celia, or Mom is going to sue you for defamation. She will ruin you. She will make sure you never get a job in this state. Tell Mom I said hello, I said, and tell her to check the signature on the December 15th withdrawal, the one for $75,000. What? Sloane asked. Ask her, I said. Ask her whose hand was shaking when she signed it. I hung up. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. Sloane didn't know about the money. Not really. She was just a prop in Veronica's play. Panicked because the script was changing and she didn't have her lines. I stood up and walked to the small table where I had set up my war room. My laptop was open. Next to it was a stack of mail that Miller, my landlord, had brought up from the main mailbox earlier that day. I had set up mail forwarding the morning I left, paying the $1 fee online to ensure nothing went to Veronica's house. I sorted through the envelopes, junk mail, a flyer for pizza, a student loan pamphlet, and then a white envelope with a window, marked Urgent Collections Department. I frowned. I didn't have any credit cards. I paid for everything with the debit card linked to my wages from Stonebridge Claims. I ripped the envelope open. It was from a company called Vista Platinum Services. Dear Ms. Celia Montrose, this is a final notice regarding your outstanding balance of $4,250 on account ending in 4599. Your account is now 120 days past due. Failure to remit payment immediately will result in further legal action and a negative report to all major credit bureaus. I stared at the paper. The account open date was listed in the top corner. 2 years ago. I was 16 years old 2 years ago. I couldn't legally open a credit card. I dropped the letter on the table as if it were burning. My mother hadn't just stolen my trust fund. She had stolen my name. I grabbed my phone and dialed Marianne. She answered on the first ring. The sound of typing in the background. "Marianne," I said, my voice tight. "I just got a collection letter. For a credit card I never opened. It has over $4,000 on it." The typing stopped. "Dates?" Marianne asked instantly. "Opened 2 years ago." "Defaulted 4 months ago." "Identity misuse," Marianne said, her tone shifting from lawyerly to lethal. "It is common in financial abuse cases. The parent maxes out their own credit, then opens lines in the child's name because the child has a clean history. Celia, this changes the landscape. This isn't just a civil dispute over a trust anymore. This is fraud." "She used me," I whispered. "She called me dead weight. But she was using me as a credit limit." "We need to document everything," Marianne commanded. "I want you to build a timeline. Right now. Do not rely on your memory. I want hard data. Go through every email, every text, every piece of paper you have. We need to show a pattern of control and extraction. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said. "And Celia," Marianne added, "don't tell them you know about the card yet. Let them think you are just fighting the trust. We keep identity theft as the nuclear option for the deposition." I spent the next 6 hours building the timeline. I taped pages to the wall of the garage apartment, connecting them with sticky notes. 2023. Trust withdrawals escalate. The credit card opened in my name. 2024. Fake consulting fees drain the account. June 2025. The dead weight speech. The coerced signature. It was a map of systematic exploitation. Veronica hadn't just favored Sloan. She had cannibalized me to feed the illusion of Sloan. At 7 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Meet me at the Galaxy Diner on Route 9. Back booth. 30 minutes. Come alone. Aunt Corinne." I stared at the screen. Corinne was Veronica's older sister. She was the quiet one, the one who usually sat in the corner at family gatherings sipping iced tea and observing. In the group chat, she had been neutral. I grabbed my keys. The Galaxy Diner was a chrome and neon relic that smelled of grease and sanitizer. I found Aunt Corinne in the back booth, nursing a black coffee. She looked tired. Her hands were wrapped around the mug as if trying to draw warmth from it. I sat down opposite her. "Did Mom send you?" "Veronica doesn't send me anywhere," Corinne said, looking at me with sad, watery eyes. "She thinks I'm at bingo." She pushed a menu toward me, but I shook my head. "Why are you here, Corinne?" "Because you did it," she said softly. "You finally pulled the plug. I didn't think you had it in you. You were always so quiet." "I had to," I said. "She lied about the money." "She lies about everything, honey," Corinne said. She took a sip of coffee. "It is her addiction, not drugs, not alcohol, significance. Veronica needs to be the most important person in the room, and to be important, she needs successful products. Sloan is her product." "Sloan is Harvard Law," I said, testing her. Corinne let out a short, bitter laugh. "Sloan is a terrified little girl who flunked the LSATs twice. Veronica paid a private tutor $500 an hour to take the practice tests for her, just so she could show the scores to the neighbors, but you can't pay someone to take the real thing." My stomach turned. "So the acceptance letter?" "Photoshop," Corinne said. "Veronica spent 3 nights on her laptop making it. I saw her. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me she was manifesting the future. She believes if she creates the evidence, the reality will catch up, but it never does." "And the party?" I asked. "The toast calling me dead weight." "She needed a villain," Corinne explained. "If Sloan wasn't getting in, Veronica needed a reason why the money was gone. She was going to blame you. She was setting it up so that when the Harvard plan fell through, she could say the funds were mishandled or that you caused a financial strain that forced Sloan to defer. You were the scapegoat. Celia." You were always the scapegoat. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It wasn't hot anymore. It was glacial. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I am a coward, Corinne said, tears spilling onto her cheeks. And because she has leverage on me too. We all owe her something. But when I saw what she did at the party, humiliating you like that, it was too much. You are a good kid. Celia, you didn't deserve to be the sacrifice. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is an old bank statement from Grandma's estate, she said, sliding it across the table. Before Veronica moved everything to Redwood, it shows the original account numbers. It might help you track where the money started before she began washing it. I took the paper. Thank you. Be careful, Corinne warned, standing up. She knows the walls are closing in, and a narcissist is most dangerous when the mirror breaks. She left a $5 bill on the table and walked out. I drove back to the garage apartment, my mind racing. I had a motive. I had the history. When I got back to my room, I sat down at my laptop to add Corinne's information to the timeline. That was when the email came in. It was the follow-up I had been waiting for from Harvard. My initial inquiry had been general, but after the shock of the first rejection, I had sent a request for a formal, stamped verification of non-enrollment, a document admissible in court. From Office of the General Counsel, Harvard University, Subject Official Verification Response, Reference 88392. Dear Ms. Montrose, attached, please find the official affidavit regarding the enrollment status of the individual in question. We have conducted a comprehensive search of our admissions and enrollment records for the past 5 academic years. We can confirm with absolute certainty that no application was ever submitted under the name Sloan Montrose, nor is there any record of an offer of admission being extended. This document is digitally signed and sealed for legal use. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF with the crimson Harvard shield at the top. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It stated, in plain bureaucratic English, that Sloan Montrose was a ghost. There was no acceptance. There was no tuition bill. There was absolutely no reason for my mother to demand I sign away my inheritance, other than to steal it for herself. I printed the document. The printer hummed and spat out the page. I taped it to the center of my wall, right in the middle of the timeline. The group chat was still buzzing on my phone. Cousin Mark was posting about how I should be ashamed of myself. My mother had posted a crying emoji. I looked at the Harvard seal on the wall. Keep crying, Mom, I whispered, because you haven't even seen the bill yet. I took a picture of the wall, the timeline, the credit card collection notice, the fake Harvard letter, and the real Harvard affidavit. I sent it to Marianne with a single caption. Celia. The gun is loaded. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, carried not by a postal worker, but by a private courier service that usually handled legal subpoenas. It was a heavy cream-colored envelope, the kind that cost $5 just to manufacture, embossed with gold leaf that caught the light of my grim, single-bulb garage apartment. I opened it with a kitchen knife still sticky from peanut butter. Inside lay a card as thick as a dinner plate. The Montrose family requests the honor of your presence at a gala celebration honoring Sloan Elizabeth Montrose, future Juris Doctor, Harvard Law School, Saturday, June 16th, 7 o'clock in the evening, Pinegate Civic Hall. Underneath the printed text, in handwriting that I recognized instantly sharp, angular, and aggressive, was a personal note from my mother. Celia, come and see what real success looks like. Perhaps you can learn something. Do not wear that awful gray sweater. Mom, I stared at the card. A gala. She wasn't just throwing a dinner. She had rented the Pinegate Civic Hall. That venue cost $4,000 a night just to unlock the doors. She was burning through cash. She didn't have to celebrate a lie that was already dead. It was pathological. It was a performance piece designed to cement the narrative so deeply into the town's consciousness that no one would dare question it. If 500 people saw Sloan being toasted as a Harvard student, then surely the bank would have to agree. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the invite. I sent it to Marianne. Celia. She is doubling down. Saturday night. Marianne. Perfect. That is the venue. Do not text her. Do not decline. Do not warn her. If you blow this up in a group chat now, she will cancel the event, hide the assets, and spin a story that you are mentally unstable. We need her on stage. We need witnesses. Celia. I'm going. Marianne. Good. Redwood Fidelity has confirmed. Mr. Henderson is sending a senior fraud investigator to meet us beforehand. They are taking the signature discrepancy very seriously. We will meet you in the parking lot at 6:45. Bring the file. I set the phone down. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't just a party anymore. It was a trap. And Veronica had spent weeks building it, unaware that she was the one who was going to step into it. But before Saturday, I needed to understand the mechanics of the theft. I knew what she had stolen: my future, my name, my money. I knew how the forged signature, the fake letter, but I still didn't understand where the money had gone. The $75,000 sent to Sterling Horizons LLC for consulting was the loose thread. I called Rowan. He picked up on the first ring, the sound of aggressive keyboard clacking in the background. I found them, Rowan said without saying hello. Sterling Horizons is a ghost. Celia, I ran a corporate entity search. It was registered 2 years ago in Delaware. The registered agent is a generic filing service, but I tracked the EIN number from the bank transfer receipt you downloaded. And, I asked, leaning forward in my chair. The EIN is linked to a secondary business license filed in Ohio, Rowan said. A DBA doing business as... The operating name is Vance Lifestyle Management. The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. Vance, I whispered. Linda Vance. Who is Linda Vance? Rowan asked. She is my mother's best friend, I said, the realization making me nauseous. She runs the local charity league. They play tennis every Wednesday. She was the one who gave the toast at my high school graduation about how it takes a village to raise a child. Well, apparently the village charges a $75,000 consulting fee, Rowan said dryly. I dug a little deeper into Vance Lifestyle Management. There are 3 consumer complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau in the last 18 months, all anonymous, all claiming that the company sold guaranteed admission packages to elite universities that never materialized. I closed my eyes. It all made sense. The pieces clicked together with a sickening precision. Veronica knew Sloan wasn't smart enough to get into Harvard on her own. So she hired Linda Vance, a woman who likely promised she had connections, or a backdoor method. Veronica paid her my inheritance money to bribe, massage, or falsify Sloan's way in, but it didn't work. Sloan didn't get in, and instead of demanding a refund or admitting defeat, Veronica and Linda had likely conspired to keep the money and fake the acceptance. Linda got to keep the cash. Veronica got to keep the prestige and the cost. Just Celia. Just the dead weight. Rowan, I said, can you print those BBB complaints? Already done, he said. I also found a screenshot of Linda's old website before she took it down. It lists reputation management and academic crafting as services. It is snake oil. Celia, high-end, country club snake oil. Bring it all, I said. Bring everything. I hung up. The anger I felt wasn't the hot, explosive kind anymore. It was cold. It was the kind of anger that allows you to sit very still and wait for the target to walk into the crosshairs. Wednesday passed, then Thursday. I went to work at Stonebridge Claims. I filed papers. I ate a sandwich in my car. I watched the world continue as if my family wasn't imploding. On Friday night, 24 hours before the gala, my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Sloan. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I moved out. I swiped the answer. What do you want? You have to stop, Sloan whispered. Her voice sounded wrecked. It was wet and thick, like she had been crying for hours. Celia, please, you have to stop talking to the bank. She is losing it. She has been pacing the hallway for 6 hours. She is talking to herself. She should be worried. I said. Fraud tends to have that effect on people. It is not fraud, Sloane shrieked, her voice cracking. She was trying to help me. She was trying to help us. Do you know how much pressure she is under? The firm is downsizing. Dad left us with nothing. She did everything to keep up appearances so we could marry well or get good jobs. She did it for us. She did it for you, I corrected. She stole from me to buy a fake life for you. There is a difference. I am going to Harvard, Sloane insisted, but the conviction was gone. It sounded like a prayer she was trying to force into existence. I am going to go in the fall. Maybe I will just defer a semester. Mom says if we get the trust unlocked, we can fix the enrollment error. It is just a clerical error. Celia. I listened to her desperate, frantic breathing. She was 21 years old. But at that moment, she sounded like a 6-year-old who had broken a vase and was trying to glue it back together before Daddy got home. Sloane, I said, my voice quiet. I want you to answer one question, and if you lie to me, I will hang up and I will never speak to you again. What? She sniffled. Did you take the LSAT? I asked. Did you actually sit in a room with a proctor and take the test, or did Linda Vance tell you that you didn't need to? The silence that followed was absolute. It stretched across the miles of telephone wire, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the hum of the static. I could hear the rain tapping against my garage window. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Oh, Sloane, I said, feeling a sudden, unexpected pang of pity. You are not the golden child. You are the prop. She didn't even let you try to fail on your own. Please, Sloane whispered, just don't come tomorrow. If you don't come, she can get through the speech. If you show up, she will snap. I am scared. Celia, I am actually scared of her. You should be, I said. But I am coming, not to hurt you, but because the only way you get out of that house is if the house burns down. I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. I realized then that my sister wasn't the villain I had made her out to be. She was an accomplice, yes, but she was also a prisoner. Veronica had built a cage out of expectations and lies, and Sloane had been living in it so long she had forgotten how to walk. Saturday evening arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. I showered and dressed. I didn't have a gown. I didn't have diamonds. I put on a pair of black dress pants and a crisp white button-down shirt I had bought at a discount store. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe ponytail. I put on the only jewelry I owned, a small silver watch my father had given me before he died. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an auditor. I drove my rusted sedan to Pine Gate Civic Hall. The parking lot was already filling up with luxury SUVs and imported sedans. I saw the mayor's car. I saw the partners from Veronica's law firm. I parked in the back, near the dumpster, far away from the valet stand. Marianne was waiting for me in a gray sedan. Next to her stood a tall man in a dark suit who looked like he smiled once a decade. Celia, Marianne said, nodding. This is Mr. Vance, no relation to Linda, from the bank's fraud unit. He has the file. Ms. Montrose, the man said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. We have reviewed the documents you uploaded. The signature discrepancy is undeniable, and the confirmation from Harvard regarding your sister's non-enrollment closes the loop. We have sufficient cause to demand an immediate freezing of all assets and a surrender of trusteeship. Are we going in there to arrest her? I asked. No, Marianne said. We are going in there to serve her. We are going to hand her the notification of the audit and the demand for repayment in front of the people she is trying to impress. It is the only way to stop her from claiming she never received it. She invited me to learn about success, I said, clutching my file folder. I think I am ready for the lesson. We walked toward the entrance. The double doors were propped open, spilling golden light and classical music out onto the pavement. Inside, the hall was transformed. Round tables covered in white linen filled the room. Massive floral arrangements of crimson and white Harvard colors towered over the guests. A banner hung across the stage. Congratulations, Sloan. The verdict is success. It was nauseating. It was perfect. We slipped in through the side entrance. The room was packed. There were at least 200 people. I recognized neighbors, teachers, and local politicians. They were all drinking champagne, eating tiny crab cakes, and buying into the lie. Veronica was near the stage, wearing a red gown that looked like it belonged on a runway. She was holding court, laughing, touching arms, radiating power. Sloan stood next to her, pale and rigid in a black dress, smiling a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. I watched them for a moment. They looked like a tableau of the American dream, airbrushed and filtered. "Ready," Marianne whispered. "Wait," I said. "Let her start." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Veronica walked up to the microphone, the train of her dress trailing behind her like a pool of blood. "Good evening, everyone," Veronica purred into the mic. Her voice was smooth, rich, and commanding. "Thank you for being here to share in this incredible moment. As a mother, you pray for days like this. You pray that your children will take the values you instilled in them and soar higher than you ever could." The crowd applauded politely. "Sloan," Veronica said, extending a hand toward my sister. "My brilliant, driven Sloan. She has worked so hard. She has sacrificed sleep, social life, everything, to earn her spot at the most prestigious law school in the world." Sloan didn't move. She looked like she was going to vomit. "And," Veronica continued, her eyes scanning the room, landing briefly on the empty chair at the back where I was supposed to be sitting if I had obeyed. "We also celebrate the unity of our family, the sacrifices we all make to support greatness, even the members who struggle to find their own path." She was doing it again, even here, at the pinnacle of her lie. She couldn't resist kicking me. "But tonight is about truth," Veronica said, raising her glass. "It is about the truth of hard work." I stepped out of the shadows. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just walked down the center aisle, my footsteps clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. Marianne and the bank investigator followed me, two silent sentinels of reality flanking my sides. The heads at the back tables turned first, then the middle tables. The whisper started as a ripple and grew into a wave. Veronica saw me. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then hardened into a glare. She clearly thought I was there to make a desperate, emotional scene she could dismiss. "Ah," Veronica said into the mic, her voice dripping with condescension. "And here is Celia, late, as usual. Everyone, please welcome my other daughter. She has had a difficult week." She was trying to frame me before I even opened my mouth. I didn't stop. I walked right up to the edge of the stage. I looked up at her. The room went deadly silent. The string quartet stopped playing. "I am not late, Mother," I said. My voice wasn't amplified, but in the silence of the hall, it carried to the rafters. "I am actually right on time." "Sit down, Celia," Veronica hissed, moving the mic away from her mouth. "Do not embarrass yourself." "I am not here to embarrass myself," I said, holding up the file folder. "I am here to give you something. Since you like paperwork so much." I climbed the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I stood on the stage, eye to level eye with Veronica Montrose. Up close, I could see the cracks in her foundation. The makeup was settling into fine lines of panic around her eyes. A vein was throbbing in her temple. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her teeth clenched. "Get off my stage." "It is not your stage, Veronica," I said, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "And it is not your money." I turned to the crowd. I saw the confusion on their faces. I saw Linda Vance at table 4, freezing with a glass of wine halfway to her mouth. "Before we continue the toast," I said, my voice steady, projecting to the back of the room, "I think there is one person we really need to thank. The person who actually funded this party, and the tuition, and the consulting fees." I looked at Sloan. She was trembling so hard her bracelets were rattling. "Sloan," I said gently, "tell them—" Security! Veronica shouted into the microphone, the sound screeching through the speakers. Get her out of here. She is having an episode. Two men in blazers started moving from the side of the room, but Mr. Vance, the bank investigator, stepped forward. He pulled a badge from his pocket and held it up. Federal banking regulations, he announced, his voice booming. Nobody touches her. This is an active investigation. The security guard stopped dead. Veronica went pale. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a curtain falling. I looked at my mother, the woman who had called me dead weight, the woman who had tried to bury me. You wanted a show, Mom, I said, placing the folder on the podium in front of her. You wanted everyone to see what the Montrose family is really made of. I leaned into the microphone. So let's show them. The spotlight was blinding. Standing on that stage, elevated 4 feet above the rest of the town, I felt the heat of the lights pressing against my skin. The room was a sea of upturned faces, a blur of sequins, tuxedos, and curious eyes. But the only thing I could feel was the iron grip of my mother's hand on my shoulder. Veronica Montrose was a master of improvisation. When I had walked up those stairs a moment ago, interrupting her flow, she hadn't screamed, she hadn't called security again. Instead, she had done something far more dangerous. She smiled. She had wrapped her arm around me, her fingernails digging into my deltoid muscle hard enough to bruise. She had pulled me into the center of the frame. She was gambling that I wouldn't make a scene if she hugged me. She was betting that her social gravity was stronger than my truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Veronica said, her voice smooth as silk, echoing through the massive speakers. It seems my youngest has decided to join us after all. We were just talking about sacrifice, were we not? She squeezed my shoulder. It was a warning. Play along, or I break you. Celia knows about sacrifice, Veronica continued, turning her charismatic beam toward the audience. She knows that sometimes, in a family, one person has to step back so the other can step forward. She knows that not everyone is born to be a star. Some of us are born to be the support system, the foundation. The crowd murmured their approval. They saw a loving mother embracing a wayward daughter. They didn't see the predator holding down its prey. In fact, Veronica said, looking down at me with eyes that were black with rage, I think Celia wanted to say a few words about gratitude, about how happy she is to see her sister achieve the dream that we all worked so hard for. She shoved the microphone into my hand. It was a dare. She was challenging me to destroy her in front of the mayor, the bank partners, and the entire social register of Hawthorne Ridge. She didn't think I had the stomach for it. She thought I was still the girl who hid in the garage. I took the microphone. It was heavy, cold metal. I looked at Sloane. She was standing 3 feet away, clutching her clutch bag like a shield. She was vibrating with tremors. She wasn't looking at the audience. She was looking at the floor, praying for a sinkhole to open up and swallow the entire civic hall. I looked at the audience, 200 people waiting for the dead weight to apologize for existing. Thank you, Mother, I said. My voice boomed through the hall. The feedback whined slightly, a high-pitched screech that made a few people wince. My mother is right, I said. I did come here to talk about sacrifice, and I came here to talk about the cost of success. Veronica nodded, her smile tight. She thought she had won. She thought I was folding. For the last month, I continued, my voice steady, I have been sleeping in a room above a garage because my mother told me that my presence in our family home was a distraction to my sister's studies. I was told that I was a financial burden. I was told that I was dead weight. The smile on Veronica's face faltered. A ripple of uneasy silence spread through the front row. I was told that the family trust fund money left by my grandfather had to be consolidated because tuition at Harvard Law is expensive, nearly $100,000 a year, and because I love my sister, and because I believed in her dream. I signed the papers. I paused. I lifted the file folder I had carried up with me. But then, I said, opening the folder, I decided to read what I signed. Veronica moved. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching for the mic. Celia, that is enough. You are tired. You are emotional. I stepped back, out of her reach. Do you want to hear a pretty speech? I asked the crowd, my voice rising. Or do you want to hear the truth? The room was frozen. No one was eating the crab cakes anymore. This is a notarized affidavit from Redwood Fidelity Bank, I said, holding up the document. The paper shook slightly in my hand. It confirms that as of yesterday morning, the Montrose Learning Trust has been frozen by the fraud department due to suspicious activity. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a physical sound, like the air being sucked out of the building. Fraud, someone whispered loudly in the second row. Lies, Veronica shouted, abandoning the politician act. She lunged for me. She is lying. She is jealous. She is trying to ruin her sister's night. She grabbed my arm, her nails raking down my skin. Ms. Montrose. The voice came from the floor. It was sharp, authoritative, and amplified by the sheer force of professional fury. Marianne stood at the foot of the stage. She wasn't holding a microphone, but she didn't need one. She was pointing a finger directly at Veronica. I advise you to unhand my client immediately, Marianne shouted. You are currently under audit for misappropriation of fiduciary funds. Assaulting the whistleblower in front of 200 witnesses is not a strategy I would recommend. Veronica froze. She looked at Marianne, then at the bank investigator standing next to her, then at the crowd. She released my arm as if I were red-hot iron. This is ridiculous, Veronica stammered, trying to regain her composure, smoothing her dress. This is a family misunderstanding. My daughter she is confused. I am not confused, I said into the mic. I have the ledger. Mom, I have a withdrawal history. I turned the page in my folder. $75,000, I read. Paid to Sterling Horizons, LLC, a shell company operating as Vance Lifestyle Management. I looked directly at table 4. Linda Vance turned the color of ash. She slowly lowered her wine glass, her eyes darting toward the exit. Admissions Consulting, I said. That is what the memo said. $75,000 to buy a way in. Stop it, Sloane screamed. It was the first time she had spoken. She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Celia, please stop it. You are killing her. I am not killing anyone. Sloane, I said, turning to her. I am just reading the receipt. The crowd was buzzing now. The shock had worn off, replaced by the voracious hunger for scandal. Phones were out. People were recording. This was the end of the Montrose dynasty, streamed live in high definition. Veronica looked wild. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, looking for a narrative she could spin. She grabbed the microphone stand, pulling it toward her. My daughter Sloane, Veronica shouted, her voice shrill, is a scholar? She is a victim of her sister's envy. We have the acceptance letter, we have the email. Do you? I asked. I looked at Sloane. She looked small. She looked like a paper doll that had been left out in the rain. Sloane, I said softly. I didn't use the microphone for this part, but the room was so quiet that everyone heard it anyway. Look at me. Sloane looked up. Her eyes were terrified, pleading. Tell them, I said. Tell them where you are going in the fall. Sloane opened her mouth. Her lower lip trembled. She looked at Veronica. Veronica was staring at her with an intensity that bordered on madness, a silent command to lie, to hold the line, to keep the charade going until the bitter end. Sloane choked out. I am going to. She is going to Harvard, Veronica shouted, cutting her off. She stepped in front of Sloane, blocking her from my view, blocking her from the audience. She starts in August. We have the orientation packet. We have the housing assignment. It was the final mistake. By answering for her, Veronica proved everything. She proved the control. She proved the fear. And most of all, She proved that Sloane had no voice of her own. I saw the faces in the crowd change. They weren't just shocked anymore. They were disgusted. They saw a mother using her daughter as a human shield for her own ego. Housing assignment, I asked into the mic. That is funny, because I have an email from the Harvard registrar. Veronica went still. I didn't bring it up here. I lied. I didn't want to ruin the party that much, but the bank has it, and the lawyer has it. I looked at the crowd. There is no housing assignment, I said, because there are no students. I didn't need to say anything else. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to call them names. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. Sloane burst into tears. Real, ugly, heaving sobs. She collapsed onto the floor of the stage, burying her face in her hands, her black dress pooling around her like oil. Veronica stood over her, not comforting her, but looking down at her with sheer contempt. She looked like a general whose soldier had refused to march into machine gun fire. "Get up," Veronica hissed. "Get up, you embarrassment." The mic caught it. Everyone heard it. I stepped back. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. I had thought this moment would feel like triumph. I thought I would feel like a warrior standing over a defeated dragon. But I didn't. I just felt sad. I was watching my family dissolve, acid-washed by their own lies. "I think we are done here," I said. I placed the microphone on the podium. It made a dull thud. I walked down the stairs. Marianne met me at the bottom. She put a hand on my back, guiding me toward the exit. The bank investigator stayed behind, moving toward the stage to serve the papers now that the show was over. As we walked up the aisle, the crowd parted for me. People I had known my whole life, neighbors who had ignored me, teachers who had forgotten my name, stared at me with a mixture of awe and fear. I wasn't the background noise anymore. I was the signal. Behind me, I heard Veronica shouting something unintelligible, trying to order the band to play, trying to order the waiters to serve the champagne. But no one moved. The spell was broken. "Don't look back," Marianne whispered. "I'm not," I said. And I wasn't. I was looking at the exit door. I was looking at the cool, dark night waiting outside. But as I pushed the doors open, I knew it wasn't over. This was just the public execution, the real work, the legal dismantling, the recovery of my name. The final signature was waiting for us in the boardroom on Monday morning. I had exposed the lie. Now, I had to bury it. The conference room at Redwood Fidelity Bank was soundproof. It was a glass box suspended high above the city, designed to keep the noise of the world out and the secrets of the wealthy in. But on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, the silence inside was loud enough to burst an eardrum. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table. Marianne was to my right, her posture rigid, a stack of files organized with military precision in front of her. Across from us sat Mr. Vance, the senior fraud investigator, looking like a man who had seen every variety of human greed and found them all boring. And then, there was Veronica. She had arrived 5 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, as if she were a celebrity dodging paparazzi rather than a trustee facing an audit. She sat at the far end of the table, putting as much distance between us as possible. She refused to look at me. She refused to look at the bank officers. She stared at a point on the wall, her jaw set in a line of brittle defiance. "Let us begin," Mr. Vance said, his voice devoid of emotion. He opened a thick binder. "We are here to review the final accounting of the Montrose Learning Trust, pursuant to the beneficiary's request for verification following a disclaimer of interest." "This is a waste of time," Veronica said, her voice raspy. She finally took off her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were red-rimmed and swollen. "My daughter made a scene at a party because she is emotionally unstable. There is no fraud. I have managed this trust for 10 years perfectly." "We will see," Mr. Vance said. He slid a piece of paper across the polished wood. It stopped right in front of Veronica. "This," Vance said, "is a withdrawal authorization dated 14 months ago for $12,000. The memo line says, 'Textbook and technology stipend.' It is signed by you, Mrs. Montrose, and countersigned by the beneficiary. Celia Montrose. I looked at the paper. I had never seen it before in my life. I did not sign that, I said calmly. We know, Vance said. He pointed to a screen mounted on the wall. A digital enlargement of the signature appeared. Our handwriting analysis software flagged this immediately once we started looking. The pressure points are wrong. The loop on the C is inconsistent with the sample Celia provided during her notarization on Friday. It is a tracing. Veronica didn't flinch. I had verbal permission. She lied smoothly. Celia asked me to handle the paperwork because she was busy with school. I was acting as her proxy. You cannot be a proxy for a signature on a document that pays you, Marianne cut in. That money didn't go to a bookstore. Veronica, it went to a cash account in your name. I used it to buy her a laptop, Veronica snapped. And clothes raising children is expensive. For $12,000, Marianne asked. Did the laptop come with a car? This is petty, Veronica scoffed, waving a hand. You are freezing a multi-million-dollar future over a clerical error regarding a computer. It is not just a computer, Vance said. He turned the page in his binder. It is a pattern. We found 11 instances of forged countersignatures, totaling nearly $60,000. But that is not the primary issue today. He looked at the door. Ms. Klein, if you would. Marianne stood up and walked to the conference room door. She opened it. Sloane walked in. She looked terrible. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. Her hair unwashed. Her face devoid of makeup. She looked like a ghost of the girl who had stood on stage in a black dress 48 hours ago. She didn't look at Veronica. She walked straight to the empty chair next to me and sat down. Sloane, Veronica hissed. What are you doing here? Do not say a word. I will handle this. Sloane stared at her hands, which were folded on the table. They were shaking. Mrs. Montrose, Vance continued, ignoring the outburst. You claimed that the $75,000 payment to Sterling Horizons, the entity owned by your associate Linda Vance, was for admissions consulting to secure Sloane's placement at Harvard Law. It was, Veronica said, and it worked. Sloane starts in August. Sloane, Marianne said gently, do you have something to tell the bank? The room went still. Veronica's eyes widened. She leaned forward, her gaze drilling into Sloane like a laser. Sloane, remember the plan. We are deferring. Tell them we are deferring. Sloane took a deep, ragged breath. She looked up, not Veronica, at me. I didn't get in, she whispered. Speak up, Vance said. I didn't get in, Sloane cried out, the words tearing out of her throat. I never got in. I took the LSAT 3 times, and I didn't break a 150. I told Mom I wanted to stop. I told her I wanted to go to nursing school or just work for a while, but she wouldn't let me. Shut up. Veronica shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. You ungrateful little... She made me lie, Sloane sobbed, turning to the bank investigator. She made the acceptance letter on her laptop. She bought the Harvard banner. She told me if I didn't play along, I was a failure who was ruining the family legacy. She said if I just acted the part, she would find a way to fix it with money. That is what the money was for. She paid Linda to find a backdoor. That is a lie. Veronica stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. She is hysterical. Celia put her up to this. Sit down, Mrs. Montrose, Vance said. His voice was like a whip crack. Now, Veronica sat. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. We have verified with Harvard, Vance said. There is no record of application or admission. The $75,000 paid to Sterling Horizons was categorized as consulting, but based on the recipient's lack of accreditation, we are flagging it as potential bribery or money laundering. But that brings us to the final piece of evidence. He slid a third document across the table. This one wasn't a bank statement. It was a credit report. Ms. Montrose, Vance said, looking at me. When we ran a full background check to verify the beneficiary identities, we found a credit card opened in your name, a Vista Platinum card. I never opened a credit card, I said. We know, Vance said. It was opened 2 years ago. You were 16. The application was submitted online from the IP address associated with your mother's home office. The email used for statements was Veronica M. legalgmail.com. I looked at the balance, $4,200. But here is the interesting part, Vance said, looking at Veronica with cold, clinical fascination. The payments for this card. The minimum payments to keep it from defaulting for the first 18 months were made from the trust. You used the trust money to pay off debt you racked up in Celia's name. Veronica went pale. The fight drained out of her. This wasn't just family business anymore. This was federal identity theft. This was wire fraud. This was a prison. Veronica stammered. Her voice was small, childlike. I was just moving things around. Cash flow is tight. The firm is not paying what it used to. I was going to pay it back. I always intended to pay it back. You stole my name, I said. I looked at her, really looked at her. I didn't see the powerful matriarch anymore. I saw a desperate, drowning woman who had climbed on top of her children to keep her head above water. I did it for the family, Veronica whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I did it for you. You don't understand what it is like. The pressure. Everyone is watching. Waiting for us to fail. I just wanted you girls to have a chance. No, I said. You wanted a mirror. You wanted Sloan to be the trophy and me to be the bank account. You didn't care about our future. You cared about your audience. Mrs. Montrose, Vance said, closing the binder. Effective immediately. The Montrose Learning Trust is frozen. We are removing you as trustee. We are also filing a suspicious activity report with the Treasury Department regarding the payments to Sterling Horizons and regarding the credit card. He looked at me. We recommend the victim file a police report for identity theft. It is the only way to clear your credit history. Veronica looked at me. Her eyes were wide with terror. Celia, please, please don't. A police report. It will ruin me. I will be disbarred. I will lose the house. Please, I am your mother. The room was silent. Sloan was weeping softly into her hands. Marianne was watching me, waiting for my decision. I thought about the garage. I thought about the dead weight toast. I thought about the notary office where she made me sign my own execution. You called me dead weight, Mom, I said softly. You shamed me in front of the whole town to force me to sign those papers. You thought that signature would erase me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the fountain pen she had given me, the grown-up pen. I placed it on the table. But that signature was the key, I said. If you hadn't forced me to sign, I never would have seen the papers. I never would have met the bank. You didn't bury me. Mom, you handed me the shovel. Celia, she begged. Reaching for my hand, I pulled back. I am going to file the report, I said to Vance. Today. Veronica let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She buried her face in her arms. We are done here, Marianne said, standing up. My client will be in touch regarding the restitution of the stolen funds. I stood up. I felt light. The heavy, crushing weight that had been sitting on my chest for 18 years was gone. I reached into my purse and pulled out the house key, the spare key she had thrown at me when she kicked me out. I placed it on the mahogany table next to the pen. I am not coming back, I said. Not to the house, not to the family group chat, not to this life. I looked at Sloan. You can come with me if you want. Miller has a couch in the garage. It is greasy, but it is honest. Sloan looked up. She looked at Veronica, who was sobbing uncontrollably, and then at the door. She stood up. She didn't say a word. She just walked over and stood next to me. Goodbye, Mother, I said. I turned my back on her. I walked toward the glass doors. I could hear her crying my name, begging, bargaining, blaming, but it sounded like noise from a television in another room. It didn't touch me. I walked out of the bank and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the street. Sloan was right beside me. We didn't hug. We didn't cheer. We just walked. I was broke. I was living in a garage. I had a long legal battle ahead of me to fix my credit, but for the first time in my life, the ground beneath my feet felt solid. I wasn't dead weight. I was free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed watching Veronica's house of cards come crashing down, please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to see how far this story has traveled. Don't forget to subscribe to Veronica Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help us push this story out to more people who need a little justice in their day. See you in the next one.